Async Python can make your programs faster, but a few tiny mistakes can make them fail in confusing ways. Let's break down 13 real asyncio bugs, see the broken code, and fix each one step by step. Let's start with the async basics that cause the most confusing bugs. Each example shows what Python actually does, then we will fix it with the smallest practical change. When a script needs user data, calling an async function alone is not enough. Here we call fetchUser, then run the script and see that Python only gives us a coroutine object and a warning instead of the user result. Let's break down why this happens. An async function call creates a coroutine, which is a plan for future work, not the completed work itself. Without a wait or an event loop entry point, Python never executes that plan. Now let's fix it at the script boundary. Asyncio.run starts an event loop, runs fetchUser to completion, and returns the final value. We run the corrected version and get the actual user data. Here's the best pattern. Use asyncio.run only as your top-level entry point, where your application begins. Inside async code, use await instead, so every coroutine you create has a clear path to execution. This bug often shows up in Jupyter notebooks and async handlers. We are already inside handler, but the code tries to start another loop with asyncio.run. Now we run it and Python rejects the nested event loop. Let's break down the error. Asyncio.run creates and manages an event loop, but handler is already executing in one. A thread can only have one active asyncio event loop at a time, so nesting them raises this runtime error. Now we fix the handler by awaiting load config directly. The existing event loop takes care of the coroutine, so there is no second loop to create. We run the fixed code and receive the config value normally. Here's the best approach. Call asyncio.run once where the application starts, and use await everywhere you're already in async code. This is especially important in notebooks, web frameworks, and async worker systems. A retry loop should leave time between attempts, otherwise it can spam an API or fail rate limits. In this version, sleep is called but never awaited. We run it now and all 3 timestamps stay at 0 seconds. Let's break down what the warning means. Asyncio sleep returns a coroutine, and only await tells the current task to pause and let the event loop resume it later. Without await, the loop races straight to the next attempt. Now we add await before asyncio.sleep. The retry task pauses after every attempt, then resumes about 1 second later. Let's run the corrected version and compare the timestamps. Here's the best habit. Whenever an API is async and represents waiting, I/O, or scheduling, check whether it must be awaited. For asyncio side asleep, the await is the part that creates the delay. Now that coroutines are running correctly, let's focus on concurrency. These mistakes do not always crash your program, but they can make it much slower or prevent work from starting at all. A dashboard often needs users, orders, and alerts at the same time. This code awaits each simulated request before starting the next one. We run it now, and the 3 delays add up to roughly 6 seconds. Let's break down the slowdown. The first await blocks this coroutine until users finishes, so orders cannot even begin yet. Sequential await is useful when steps depend on each other, but these 3 requests do not. Now we fix the dashboard with asyncio.gather. It starts all 3 independent fetches together and waits until all of them finish. We run the new version, and total time drops to the longest single request, about 3 seconds. Here's the best pattern. Use asyncio.gather when operations are truly independent and can safely happen at the same time. Do not use it when one step needs the output, validation, or side effect of an earlier step. Batch processors often build many worker calls in a loop. This code creates 3 coroutine objects, but it never gives them to the event loop. We run it now, and the terminal shows coroutine objects instead of worker completion messages. Let's break down the distinction. Now we pass the worker coroutines to asyncio.gather. Gather schedules them, waits for every worker to finish, and gives us their results. We run the fixed batch and every worker completes. Here's the best rule. Every coroutine
look here. When what?
Next, we are looking at code that silently freezes an otherwise asynchronous application. These mistakes are especially painful in APIs, workers, and services handling multiple requests at once. In a real service, one legacy blocking call can pause work for every connected client. Here, the heartbeat represents another request. So let's write the blocking version and then run the script. Notice that after the first heartbeat, nothing else gets a chance to run until time sleep finishes. Let's break down why this happens. Asyncio switches tasks only when code cooperatively awaits, but time sleep holds the event loop thread completely. The heartbeat timer expires during that pause, yet its task cannot print again until the blocking function returns. Now let's fix the delay by replacing time sleep with asyncio sleep. We run the same two tasks again, but this await gives control back to the event loop while the delay is in progress. The heartbeat now continues at its regular pace. Now let's show the best practice. Keep work on the event loop cooperative because that protects responsiveness for every task. Prefer async IO libraries and asyncio.sleep for waiting. For a library that cannot be made async, offload its blocking function to a thread or process. An async API can still freeze while it generates a report, hashes data, or transforms a large payload. We will simulate that expensive calculation beside a heartbeat, then run it. The report starts immediately, but the later heartbeats are delayed until all CPU work is finished. Let's unpack the result. The function contains no await, so it owns the event loop thread until its loop ends. Declaring the caller async does not change that. CPU-bound work still needs somewhere else to run. Now we are fixing the bottleneck with asyncio.thread. The calculation runs in a worker thread, while the event loop stays available to schedule the heartbeat. Run this version and the service remains responsive while the report is calculated. Now let's show the best practice. Choose the offload based on the kind of work because threads and processes solve different problems. Asyncio.gather is useful for blocking functions and lightweight cases. For substantial pure Python CPU work, use a process pool so the GIL does not limit parallel execution. Now we will make background tasks visible and safe. Starting a task is easy. Supervising its result, failure, and cancellation is the part that keeps applications reliable. Background work is common for emails, notifications, and cache refreshes, but fire and forget code can quietly lose an important failure. Here we start a notification task and never inspect it, then run the script. The loop reports that its exception was never retrieved, even though the main request finishes normally. Let's break down the warning. Create task schedules work, but it does not automatically pass that task's exception into your normal control flow. The custom loop handler only makes the warning compact for this demo. It does not recover the failed notification. Now we are fixing the task lifecycle by saving its reference and awaiting it. When the notification fails, our code receives the exception and prints a controlled message. Run this version, and there is no unhandled background task warning. Now let's show the best practice. Every task needs an owner because failures need an intentional response. Keep task references and await them directly, collect related work with gather, or use structured task supervision. Then choose whether the failure should propagate, be retried, or be recorded. Shutdown code often cancels workers while they hold files, connections, or temporary state. We open a simulated resource, cancel the worker at its await, and now run the script. The task is canceled, but the final state tells us the resource was never closed. Let's examine why the close code never runs. Cancellation raises canceled error at the next cancellation point, which is the await in this worker, because there is no cleanup guard. Execution jumps out before the normal closing lines. Now we are fixing the worker with a finally block. It closes the resource whether the work completes or cancellation interrupts it, and the accept block re-raises cancellation after logging it. Run the fixed version and both cleanup and cancellation are confirmed. Now let's show the best practice. Put essential release work in finally, because cancellation can arrive before normal code reaches the end. After cleanup, normally re-raise canceled error, so callers still know the work was canceled. For real resources, async context managers make this pattern even safer. The last mistake is subtle because every task looks correct on its own. Once tasks share mutable state across await points, their operations can interleave in ways that lose data. Request counters, inventory, and account balances often have this exact shape. Each worker reads the counter, yields control, and writes back its increment. So let's run 50 workers together. They all read 0 before any write happens, leaving a final value of 1 instead of 50. Let's break down the race. Asyncio switches only at await points, but that is enough to split one logical update into separate read and write operations. Every worker resumes with an outdated copy of the counter and overwrites another worker's result. Now we are fixing the shared update with asyncio lock. Only one worker can enter the read modify write section at a time, so each worker sees the latest counter value. Run the protected version and the final count is exactly 50. Now let's show the best practice. Reduce shared mutable state first, because avoiding the shared update is often simpler than locking it. When state must be shared, guard the full async critical section with asyncio lock. Keep that section as small as possible and do not hold the lock around unrelated work. Next, let's look at a lock bug that can freeze a coroutine even though there is only one task involved. A cache update often calls helper functions, and that is where lock ownership can become unclear. Here, save user acquires cache luck, then awaits update cache, which tries to acquire cache luck again. Now we run the script and the timeout exposes the deadlock. Let's break down the result. Asyncio lock is not reentrant, so the outer function still owns the lock while the inner function is waiting for it. Neither coroutine can move forward until the timeout cancels the work. Now let's fix it by making the cache helper synchronous and explicitly usable only while the caller owns the lock. Save user takes the lock once, performs the update, and then releases it. When we run this version, the cache value is printed immediately. Here's the better pattern to keep. Keep lock scopes small and make ownership explicit. Either the helper owns the lock, or the caller owns it, but never both. This is especially important in layered cache and repository code. Concurrency also needs a deliberate error strategy, especially when independent records are processed as one batch. Imagine importing records from a file where one malformed item should not hide the status of every other item. This gather call uses its default error behavior, so the first worker failure is raised to main. Now we run it and see one successful import followed by an error without a complete result list. Let's unpack what happened. Default gather sends the first exception back to the caller, so main cannot tell which later items succeeded or failed. That can be correct for an all or nothing operation, but it is usually poor reporting for independent imports. Now we are fixing the batch strategy. Return ignitions true keeps every worker result, and the loop labels each record as a success or a failure. We run it again and the terminal gives a complete actionable summary. Here's the decision to make before calling gather. Use fail-fast behavior when every task must succeed together, and collect exceptions when items can be handled independently. The important part is making the error policy visible in the code. Finally, let's protect a production service from a slow resource leak that only becomes obvious under sustained traffic. A crawler or API client can look fine at first while quietly accumulating open sockets. This code creates a session, performs a request, and then simply leaves the session alive. Now we run it and the mock client reports the resource leak. Let's break down why this matters. The request output only proves that one operation worked. It says nothing about whether its connection was released. When this runs repeatedly in production, unclosed sessions can slowly consume sockets and pool capacity. Now let's fix the lifecycle with async with. The context manager calls close when the block exits, even when our example raises a parsing error. We run the corrected version and can see the request, the confirmed close, and the handled failure in that order. Here's the production pattern to use. Create reusable async clients at the right application scope, and close them through async context managers or explicit shutdown hooks. This gives cleanup a guaranteed path on both success and failure. You now know the async Python mistakes that catch many developers off guard. Like and subscribe for more real Python bugs, and tell me in the comments which Python topic you want to debug next.